Hey everybody, welcome to Sid's Little Corner of the Internet. We've got another Transformers review coming your way. This time around, we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Legacy Core Class Decepticon Iguanus. So as we always do, let's go ahead and take a look at that packaging first. And right up top, you've got that really nice artwork of Iguanus in his motorcycle mode. And you've got Transformers Legacy right there. There's your big gaping hole. And coming on down, Transformers Legacy, Decepticon, Iguanus, Transformers at the side. Over here, you've got some artwork on the back. You get your product shots, and you get all your warnings. And there's your sad baby. And on this side, you have your artwork with the laser eyes. He's a core class. And down low, you have your manufacturing information. So that's it for the packaging. Let's go ahead and see what came inside that box. Behold, laid out here before you is everything that came inside that box, and it's not much, but it's a core class, so that's okay. But we'll go ahead and start right here with your little sheet of warnings, conveniently folded up for disposal. And then you have your instruction booklet. And that leaves you with what you see here, which is Iguanus and his one accessory. So let's go ahead and bring that accessory in and take a look at it. And I do like this accessory. I think it looks really good. I like the paint that they've applied on here. So the nice thing is, as well, is you do have blast effect compatibility on this. So you've got a couple of ports on either side, and then you also have this 3mm peg right there. Now you can use this. This can be used in bot mode in his hand, and then over here you've got a 5mm peg that can be used when he's in his motorcycle mode, or use it any way that you seem fit. So yeah, very nice. And I do, like I said, like the paint on this. So it's got a good amount of sculpt work. And for being a core class weapon and accessory, I think this came out looking really good. There you go. All right, so that is it for the accessories. So we'll not waste any more time. We're going to bring Mr. Iguanus right in and take a look at him. Here he is, the bot we've all been waiting to see. This is the core class Iguanus. So let's go ahead and bring him in for those details. And we'll start right up here with that head sculpt. And as I mentioned with his accessory, as far as core class figures go, this guy looks really good. The paint, the sculpt work, all that detailing, everything. I like him. I like what they've done here. But let's go ahead and take a look at that face. I'll try to keep it in focus here. And you can see all that detail. Looks really good on this guy. And he's got those little yellow eyes. Great sculpt work on that face. A lot of nice action going on the chest. You've got those reds and those golds, and it almost looks like he's got a utility belt on, kind of like Batman. And then good sculpt work in those legs. You've got those gold accents on those kneecaps. And then coming down here to those feet. Those feet would have been nice if we would have had maybe a little bit of paint on those toes, but again, being a core class, not going to complain too much. Coming up to the side here, looking at those legs from the side, everything's looking pretty good. He fills out really well, so not a lot of hollow areas. Coming up underneath, you can see on those arms, you've got a little bit of a hollow spot there, but they filled it in with a little bit of detail, so that's always helpful. And then you have those black forearms right there, and then you've got those big purple fists. And then right out here on the outside of the arms, you've got some spikes. So all that looks good. And then coming around here to the back, not awful, not by any means, especially for a core class. Just a little bit of folded up motorcycle on the back there, but I like what they've done here with it. This is just a really cool look. I hope it's coming across well on camera, because in hand, it looks really good. Now, you do have some hollow areas on the backs of those legs. I can forgive it being a core class, and you do get some 5mm ports back here that you can use some effects on as well. So, if you're going to have him in some kind of an action pose, that'll help cover those up too. And then you do have 5mm ports on the bottoms of those feet as well. So a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with this guy. And of course, he's got that port back there. So let's not waste any time. We're just going to jump right into the articulation with this guy. And we'll start right up here with the head. So you don't get a lot on the head. I mean, you can, if you squint your eyes, you can kind of imagine and you can almost feel a little bit of head movement. So you don't get a lot of side to side, but that's mostly due to this geometry right here. You do get a little bit of up and a little bit of down, and then you can turn the head about that far before it starts making me uncomfortable. I feel like I'm going to pop it off that ball joint right there. And then at the shoulders, you can bring the arm up that far, and you'll notice that the one thing that I do have an issue with is the ball joints on these shoulders are a little bit loose. So when you bring them out to try to do kind of that pose right there, they're not going to hold. So, but we'll talk about that as far as quality goes later. But yeah, you can bring the shoulders out that far, and keeping in mind you've got this wheel back here, you could take those all the way around if you choose to do so. Elbows are on a ball joint. Now these are nice and stiff, so they will hold, no doubt about it, and you're going to get a little bit over 90 on there. And then because they're on a ball joint, you can pretty much spin those around anywhere you want to. Nothing at the hands, so those are fixed. You do get waist rotation, however. Now this is primarily because of the transformation, but it's always helpful to have it. So you can take this all the way around, and as a matter of fact, you're supposed to get him in his motorcycle mode. All right, now moving on down to the legs. As far as those go, you're going to get a split about that far. So you're not going to get a full split. You're not even going to get close to a Van Damme on this guy, but it's more than enough to get him in some nice poses. And as far as kicking, he will kick forward that far, and he will kick backward. Come on, a little bit. There you go. He'll kick backward that far before he really starts to run into himself. I mean, that's essentially what's going on. You're getting some interference right up here. So if you could find a way to bypass that, if you force it a little bit, you can get a little bit more, but that makes me nervous. So it's just that little bit of clearance right there. This is the kind of thing I wouldn't want to do too often. All right, and you get a little bit of rotation on those hips simply because they're on ball joints. But most of what you're going to get as far as twist is going to come down here in the knee. So those knees are on ball joints as well, as you can see back here. So you're going to be able to take that all the way around if you choose to do so. And then as far as knee bends go, you're going to get just over 90. And then down here at the feet, same thing, feet are on ball joints. Now, much like the shoulders, these are looser than I would have preferred. The nice thing is, because of the design of the feet, they can't really go back very far. So as far as transformation goes, by design, you want them to go in that far for your ankle tilt. But it doesn't really hinder the stability of the figure. So he's got nice big heels, and because of the geometry interference, you're not going to have to worry too much about the guy being, top heavy or falling over on you. So you're just going to need to be a little careful. I mean, you're going to be able to get him quite a bit without him falling over. So no real stability issues there, but I would have liked to have seen these ball joints being a little tighter. But anyway, you can take those feet around a full 360 if you choose to do so. The ankle tilt does come in like that, and then you get down that far and you get up that far on those feet. So yeah, I think as far as looks, this guy looks fantastic, really does. I mean, for a core class figure, this guy's really cool. I love the way this bot mode looks, and I think it's a good homage to that G1 Pretender Iguanus that came out all those years ago. Now, of course, that G1 Pretender was a totally different design. I mean, you would take this skin off and there would be a robot inside, and they've just kind of reimagined him here as an actually transformable figure. But yeah, details look good. Articulation, not the best, but you'll get him there. And overall, a little bit of concern about those ball joints in those shoulders, a little bit in the hips, and then in the feet. So I would have liked to have seen them be a little bit tighter there. But overall, looks-wise, articulation-wise, I think you're going to have some fun with this guy. Now, what we'll do next is we'll throw some accessories on this guy and give you an idea of what you can do with him. So here we see Iguanus all accessorized up and utilizing some of those blast effects that you do have available. Unfortunately, unless I'm missing it, I cannot find a 3mm port for the flight stand, at least in his bot mode. So that's a bit of a bummer. But as you can see, you can still get him in some good poses and you can still have some fun with him. I really, really would have liked to have had that head have a little bit more maneuverability there, so it would actually look like he was looking in the direction that he was shooting or looking up. But yeah, I mean, you can see you've got blast effect compatibility on the weapon, and then of course you've got all the other different ports that you can use to put this guy in a nice pose. So I think there's definitely a lot of fun to be had with Iguanus in this mode with those blast effect ports and that blast effect compatibility. So very much appreciated there. Also, kind of showing off that he does have a good amount of stability. I mean, you can get him up on one foot and get him in a nice pose as long as you find that sweet spot for the balance, and he'll hold it for you. So yeah, with all that being done, let's go ahead and get this guy into his alt mode and take a look at him there. And here we see Iguanus in his alt mode. And as far as core class figures go, I'm actually really fine with this. It's obvious that it is not the most complex transformation, and it's certainly not the most complete looking alt mode. But you know what? It works. There's something about this guy. He's cool in his bot mode, and this just looks like the kind of reptilian style alien motorcycle that nobody's going to want to try to get on anyway, so it does not have to completely 100% replicate an Earth form in my mind. So this works for me. I think it looks cool. But let's go ahead and bring it in and take a look at some of those details. And we'll start right up here with the front, whatever you want to call it. So you've got that nice Decepticon symbol right there, and you've got those reds and purples, all that looking good. You do have that nice big port right there that you can put his weapon in or any other accessories if you choose to do so. And of course, these are his arms, and you can see how they plug into his wheels there. And I really like the red on these wheels. The fact that they're just not plain black, that they've got these things decked out in a red. That's just really cool. And this is just giving me kind of SidKReilly GoBot vibes, just with those hands down there on the wheels. I just really dig it. So, and then coming around here to the side, you can see essentially he's just doing a crazy yoga pose, and you can see his feet down here where they plug in as well. But it looks good. It works. Coming around to the back, there's his kneecaps. And then you've got that wheel right there. Very cool. And of course this side is pretty much the same as the other side, except you're just seeing the flip side of what was his shoulders when he was in his bot mode. And then here he is from the top. And here he is from the bottom. And they did even add a little bit of detail in there. You can see some springs or some sculpt work for some springs or maybe some type of suspension there by the wheels. So very well done. And he rolls great. Now he doesn't have a kickstand, so the wheels are wide enough that if you're careful you can balance him, but it doesn't take a whole lot to knock him over. But yeah, he works. He looks good. I like him. So let's go ahead. We're not going to do any fancy editing here. We're just going to throw on his accessory and show you how that works. So as we noted earlier, you have this smaller peg on this side that plugs into his fists, and you have the larger peg that will go into those 5mm ports. And conveniently enough, you've got a 5mm port right there. Look at that. So you can do something like that if you want to. And of course, in this mode, you can throw on a blast effect, because why not? And bonus, in this mode, you can also, these aren't going to match. I'll find one that does. This matches. See if it fits. You can throw in another blast effect on the end. There you go. Yeah, now he is shooting an RPG. Whatever you want it to be, you can do something like that. Now you do also have the fist ports down here, but unfortunately in this mode you cannot fit them very well. I mean, you can put them on, but it's going to interfere with the motorcycle mode. So, I mean, if you were just going to use him for posing, maybe you could do something like this. But otherwise, really the only place you're putting that accessory in his alt mode is just right up there on the top, just right up here. So, but I do like it. I think the alt mode looks good. I like the accessory on there. And there's just something funky and cool about this guy. And yeah, he's at a core class price point, and I do think you get your money's worth as far as that goes. All right, so what we'll do is we'll bring in some comparisons so we can take a look at this guy in his alt mode versus some other figures out there. Unfortunately, I've never had a G1 Iguanus Pretender figure in my collection. So for our first alt mode comparison, I'm going with the closest thing that I have. This is actually the G1 Autobot Wave Rider Pretender. in his alt mode. Now, of course, this is without the human skin on him. This is just his alt mode of the robot that comes inside that pretender form. So you can see how the new Iguanus scales up with one of the original G1 pretenders. Moving on to our next alt mode comparison. This is the Squeaks figure that came out, the Premiere Edition Squeaks figure that came out for the Transformers The Last Night movie. For a more contemporary comparison, here we see the Legacy Iguanus Core Class next to the Legacy RC Deluxe Class, and really not a huge size difference here, at least in the alt mode, but you can see how he scales up next to RC there. And for our final alt mode comparison, here you see Iguanus with his Core Class Legacy Wavemates. So on the left, this is the Core Class Skywarp, and on the right, this is Core Class Hot Rod. So you can see how he scales up to his Wavemates. That'll do it for those alt mode comparisons, so let's get him back in his bot mode and do some comparisons there. For our first robot mode comparison, here we see Iguanus next to the G1 Pretender Wave Rider, or at least his outer human skin, if you will. So you can see a size comparison between those two. And here we see the bot that was inside that G1 human Pretender skin. This is the actual robot Wave Rider from G1. Moving right along to our next comparison, this is the Premiere Edition Deluxe Class Squeaks figure that we got with the Transformers The Last Night movie premiere. Next up here we see Iguanus, which is a core class, next to a Transformers Legacy Deluxe Class. This is the Deluxe Class Legacy RC. For a fellow core class comparison, here we see Iguanus next to the War for Cybertron core class Soundwave. And last but certainly not least, here we have Iguanus next to his fellow core class Wavemates for the Legacy line. So on the left is the core class Skywarp, and on the right is the core class Hot Rod. So you can see how he looks next to his Wavemates. That's going to wrap it up for comparisons, so let's go ahead and get into those final thoughts. Let's talk a little bit about the Transformers Legacy Core Class Iguanus. I think in short that this is a fun little figure. I think he has a lot of playability and he looks absolutely fantastic for his price point. He's not perfect by any means, and I do have concerns about those ball joints, particularly in the hips and in the shoulders. But I think for the price point, you get a lot of playability in this figure, and he looks good in both of his modes. He's just a lot of fun to play with, and I'm actually surprised by how much I do like him. But let's go ahead and quantify this guy a little bit, and we'll start with the aesthetics, the overall looks of this figure. As I stated, I think he looks fantastic. He's got a great shelf presence, even though he's a little figure. He's got a very big shelf presence. He's got bright, bold colors with those purples and reds and golds, and the sculpt work on this figure is really, really well done. He's definitely going to catch your eye, and he's got a really cool, funky motorcycle look, and that bot mode is great. Really, my only complaints as far as aesthetics go for this price point is he could have used a little bit more paint. I know that's weird to say for a figure that has as much paint as he does, but I think definitely in those toes, he could have used a little bit more paint. And I really wish they would have maybe minimized the hollow backs of the legs and the bottoms of those arms. I think that would have gone a long way as well. But overall for aesthetics, I'm going to give this guy a 9 out of 10. I think he looks pretty good. Now, moving on to the articulation, he's pretty well done. There are a few areas where I would have liked to have seen a little bit more work, but although it's for transformation, the fact that he has a waist rotation goes a long way for me. I wish we could have gotten more range of motion out of those hips, particularly for the splits, so you could get him into some more action moves. And also for that head, you know, when you've got him a little lower, and when I was showing him with his accessories, if you go back and take a look, you'll see what I mean. You can't make him look up. So if he's shooting upward, or If you have him in some dynamic pose where his upper body's down a little bit, he's just looking at the ground. He's not going to be able to look where he's going. So would have liked to have seen a little bit more there. But everywhere else for a deluxe class figure, I think is pretty well done. Articulation, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. So moving on to the accessories. Again, for a deluxe class price point, I think the accessory is pretty good. You only get the one. You get that gun, but it looks great. Great paint apps, again, with the reds and the golds. Looks really good. The fact that it's blast effect compatible is great, so you can throw different blast effects in there. Really adds a lot to him as well. But there's just something that feels lacking. I don't know what it is per se, but it just feels like, although that is a great accessory, it's singular. And I don't know if that's just me talking, being spoiled by other figures that have multiple accessories, but this is great. I feel like something is lacking. I can't put my finger on it, but I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 for the accessory that he comes with. I think it does hit all the right points as far as the looks and the blast effect compatibility. So 8 out of 10 on that. Moving on to quality, this is probably his weakest point. So overall quality out of the box for my copy was good. I don't have any issues with the paint. I don't have any issues with the sculpt work or any of the plastic molding, anything like that. He looks good. He came with everything he was supposed to, and functions. Now, my concern is going to be long-term, and I'm even seeing it now, just having handled him a little bit. Those ball joints in his shoulders and in his hips are starting to get really loose on my copy, and I've also noticed that the ball joints and the ankles are getting loose. So it's not going to take any time at all before this guy is just a floppy mess. It's just going to take a few more transformations and a few more poses, and he's going to be all over the place, and you're going to need to take matters into your own hands to try to tighten up those ball joints. I understand that ball joints are cheap. They're easy to manufacture. Makes life easier for Hasbro. But yeah, they're just not the way to go. I don't like ball joints, particularly for my major joints on any of my figures. So out of the box, he's good. Long term, I definitely have my concerns. So I'm going to give this guy a 7 out of 10 on quality. So that brings us to our last bullet, which is overall value. Now this one's a little tricky. I'm in North America, so my two major retailers, when I look for figures, if I don't buy them online, my two major retailers are Target and Walmart. And I've noticed for this guy in particular that they have different prices for their core class figures. So it's something that for those of you who are looking for figures out in the wild, it's something to pay attention to. And in this case, Target actually wins the battle. So I saw this figure at Walmart for $11.99 or $12 US. But I saw him at Target for $9.99 or $10 US. That's a difference of $2 just between those two retailers. So my recommendation to you is definitely do your price comparisons and find him at the most competitive retailer. And in this circumstance, it was Target. So I did pick this guy up in the wild at a Target in North America for $10 US. And I think he's worth it. I think the value is there. He's just a really cool looking figure. The transformation is fun and simple. His accessory looks good, and it has that blast effect compatibility, and I think there's a lot of fun to be had with this figure. Long-term concerns about quality aside, I think this guy's a lot of fun, and I think you would enjoy him. So that brings us to a grand total out of a possible 50 points. The core class Iguanus gets 40 out of 50, which puts him right at 80%. He would have scored a little bit higher if it wasn't for those ball joints. So those are a little disappointing for me, but overall I think this is a good figure, and this is one that I would recommend that you pick up, particularly if you enjoy the original G1 Pretender and this nice callback to him. And of course, if you're collecting those legacy figures, I think he is definitely a fun core class to pick up. So that's going to do it for the review for Iguanus. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I hope you were entertained. Hope you got some good information out of it. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe, and feel free to leave some comments. Let us know what you think about this figure, about the review, about the channel in general, or just about the state of the world. So until we see you guys in the next one, take care.